Welcome to the Embodiment podcast. This show is for you if you see the body as more than a brain taxi. It's for people interested in coming home to the body as a holistic aspect of who we are and how we live. Episodes contain practical tips, exercises you can take away, and interviews with embodiment specialists from around the world. I'm your host, Mark Walsh. So on the show today, Lin Holmquist. So Lin is a yoga teacher, yoga therapist, tantric practitioner, a dakini. We'll say more about what that is perhaps later. She's joining us from Sweden, where she runs the Ängsbacka Tantra Festival, which is a beautiful, huge hippie love fest by all accounts that I want to go to one day. Lin, welcome.
Thank you.
What was your journey with working with the body?
Oh my God. It suddenly came to me one day that I could feel my body, and it surprised me and it scared me, and I had a lot of shit in my body that prevented me from move, and I always thought that I couldn't move, that I was too clumsy or too unfit or too stiff somehow. And then I started to practice yoga when I was pregnant with my first child. And it was not an easy start. It was a very much hate-love relationship to movement.
What was the hate there? What was difficult? Was it that there's difficult emotions, or that you were just unfamiliar with your body?
It was difficult for me to realize that I turned my body off, that I couldn't feel, and that when I felt, it was painful. Right. And it surprised me, because I always thought that I had a good connection with myself, or it was natural as a child to me to be in very deep connection with me. And then, of course, I started to see all the mind fucks and all the shit that prevented me from feeling myself, and that was also painful for my ego.
You know, I don't think people talk about this enough, the pain of rediscovering the body, because there's like physical pain that might be there, or emotional trauma, but then there's also this sort of ego hit of like, what do you mean I can't fucking do this? Like, I'm a smart person, I've got a degree, I've been to school, is this thing? Because you don't know what you don't know, right? And then it's like, shit, there's this whole world that I'm bad at, that judgmental mind. So the way in which, and then there's the sadness of kind of like, oh my God, I've lost contact with this thing that I once had, this being that I am. And I feel like people don't talk enough about the almost like the disadvantages of embodiment, or the initial pain of starting that journey. This is why it's not so common, right?
Mm-hmm. And that many people hear that it's good, and then they start and then they quit after 6 months, because they find different reasons most of the time, like, oh, I don't have time, or I want to do something that gives me more fitness, or like having different excuses for not doing the work, because it is painful on some level. In the beginning. Like
often say yoga teachers or dance teachers say, the body's amazing, you'll love it, come back home. And it's not always like that, is it? There's all these reasons to go, fuck that, actually, I'm going to go back to watching TV and drinking beer. So what happened then? So you'd had a child, you'd started this journey of coming back to yourself. It's a bit painful, but, something must have kept motivating you to continue. And I know since then you've really, done some deep study.
Yeah, I think it was having my daughter that was the turning point. When I gave birth to her, and I had a so-called pain-free birth, where I could feel bliss more than anything else. And it surprised me, because everything that I ever seen or have told to other people told me about the birth-giving process, it is painful. And you see people on TV screaming, and for me, it isn't that way. So this experience was such a powerful imprint in my existence. So I started to research, like, why is it like this? And that led me into the practice of yoga. And like, even though it was painful and challenging at many times, at the end of every yoga class, it's like, I'm coming home. And it was worth 1 hour of, oh my God, not again. And this feeling.
The birth one, I just point listeners to Roma Norris's podcast, which is podcast 12 or something. She talks a lot about this. It's her area. And it just strikes me that that's quite a powerful narrative to say, life begins in pain. You know, the body begins with this person who loves you suffering. So obviously I can't speak to personal experience of that, but certainly as a body narrative that feels pretty toxic, right? That your embodiment starts with the suffering of someone who loves you. Like, and it doesn't have to be the case, as I've heard from a number of women.
And I think the body is made to give birth in bliss, and I don't think nature makes mistakes.
Interesting. Now, we've talked about the baby being born. We've kind of missed a step here, which is pretty important for your work. Like, as well as the yoga, you've also a Tantra teacher, right? Like, this is intimacy, Tantra. Maybe say more about what that is for listeners if they're new to that and your particular approach to it.
Tantra, for me, it is expansion of my life experience. I'm allowed to be 100% relaxed and receptive and to feel life in all its shapes, in all its colors, and this acceptance of life as it is. It feels like love. This is unconditional love, like this full, peaceful, loving attitude to life. For me, that is Tantra. And that comes through, for myself and in my work, through touch and through being in connection with this vehicle of the soul, because this is a precious tool, and it's the nerve ending of my soul, you know. And I want it to touch juicy things and to taste delicious things and to see beauty and to shiver of joy, you know.
I love hearing you talk about this kind of thing. I feel juicier just chatting to you, actually. It's great. Just hanging out at your house with our beautiful friend, is it Jacopo, who I just interviewed yesterday, you know. And that kind of like love of life, you know, that life in its full richness, even if you're not doing anything. I think we're just having tea and chatting, you know, but this life in its richness, which is certainly like that appeals to me. So what does a session look like? You do workshops with groups. I know you do one-to-one work, couples work, like it's very abstract at this point. So what happens in those workshops and one-to-one sessions?
I'm the one who create the boundaries. Like, we do it together, but I'm the one who create the frame. And the more boundaries and the more framework you have around a group, the more safe the people feel, the more they will play.
Yeah.
And then they ask each other, how do you play, and what feels good to you? And we practice to be honest. And when we are honest, we can also be honest with a non-verbal communication. And then we like move together in a way that is pleasurable and delicious and ecstatic, you know.
Well, I mean, I talk about the container when I'm teaching this to my students about, you know, clear boundaries of time and structure and commitment. And, you know, the container is just like a key concept that we work with. And I teach students some very specific things around that. But this is a general somatic quality to it too. And let's get even more specific, though. What are people doing on this workshop or in this one?
It depends on what kind of workshop it is. Like, connecting exercises, like how do we go away from socialization? Like, we have so many social games, how we are smiling, how we are moving, the way we are small talking to each other. Like, going away from there and connecting for real with people and connecting behind the masks. And that can be through eye-gazing meditations or social play or dancing, and basically more and more relaxing the nervous system in order to feel the body more. And when people are feeling safe, they are exploring how to be alive in the more delicious way, like through breath or sound or touching themselves or touching each other, or it can be anything from touching my own face to receiving an anal massage from someone.
So there's the full spectrum there from, you know, I'm guessing consent and choice is really important in this. So it's not like, okay, people come in, you're like, right, everyone take their clothes off. We're going to do anal tongue massage. You know, I remember doing one Tantra thing and it was just using a forearm massage. And it was able to really explore some principles and some boundaries, you know, with someone who didn't have that sexual contact with. And that actually got really good, and we were able to explore like what we wanted and what we didn't want. And I thought, this is really useful training without needing to sort of get naked and cover ourselves in peanut butter, you know?
Yeah. And it's so much fun. And I think it's a part of our sexuality that we lost in the way that society is and the way we are brought up, like going immediately from children to having sexuality and a sexual drive, and no understanding about what is cuddling and what is boundaries and how can we explore our bodies without penetration. And so many young people have already at the age of 12 the image of penetration as the goal, as the final sexual act, but actually it's so much more.
Yeah, interesting. And we talk about culture quite a lot on this show. Part of my mission is to bring embodiment teachers from different countries other than the States. We have people from the States on, lots of good teachers there, but we have Italians on. I just interviewed a Spanish woman, French. We try and English, Irish, Russian. We try and mix it up culturally. And you're Swedish, is that right, or Norwegian?
Yes,
Swedish.
Mm-hmm.
And you're based part of the year in Sweden and part of the year in Asia.
Yes, that's right.
Thailand. Mm-hmm. You just told me you'd come back from.
Thailand, India, yeah.
So different cultures have different relationships to sex, don't they? Like in Thailand, there's a certain relationship to sex. In Sweden, as I understand it, the sex education, for example, is much better than England and, wildly better than the United States. As I understand it, the Dutch have a pretty good sex education system. Like, what's your experience in, obviously at places like Angsbacher, you're teaching people from all over the world. Like, what's your experience of the kind of cross-cultural views on sexuality, sex education, this kind of thing?
What is that cross-cultural? I have to understand.
How, for example, the first time I had a Swedish lover, I was quite shocked at how kind of just straightforward she was about sex. There was just sort of like no big deal quality about it. It wasn't like dirty or secret. And as I understand, Thailand has particular attitudes towards sex that are different. I've had American partners and there's certain things there that are different in terms of expectations or boundaries. So as someone who works a lot internationally, comes from, Sweden has this kind of almost sexy reputation, doesn't it? There's a kind of cliche there, like my generation all grew up with Swedish porn. So you say Sweden, people think IKEA and porn. That's an they're like the three big associations in the UK for people my age. Okay. I'd just love to hear you speak to the notion of sexuality across different cultures a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's very interesting because I have seen so many different expressions of sexuality when I'm traveling. In India, for example, I think it's 97% of the men have their first sexual experience with another man.
Wow.
Yes, and most Indian men have problems with premature ejaculation, and I think that's because they don't have connection between the men and the women, and it's not allowed to fuck before you get married,
It's incredibly exciting and overstimulating.
Yeah, really. And some people are also married to wives that they didn't choose, so maybe the sex life is kind of dry.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting, and then to compare it to, for example, Brazil, where we have an image of, the Brazilian, it's really hot, it's really sensual, but it's mostly a game. Like they are playing this game in order to get something, and they are pretending to be fiery and sexy, but actually they only want to get something. And also in Brazil, it's very popular with homosexuality and
super gay. Yeah, I lived above a nightclub in Brazil for 6 months. Brazil was a major education for my hips. It was a hell of an experience. And some things there is a juiciness there that I experienced. And, there is a kind of lateral movement and the presence of sexuality in everyday life. So people always used to say to me, Brazil's, soccer is Brazil's top sport. And I'd say, no. Brazil's top sport is flirting and affairs. Like that's the biggest sport in Brazil.
Yeah.
And Thailand, that's a place you play a lot. I've never been there. So it has this reputation for the sex trade, but also seems to be like a sex positive kind of place in some ways. Is that a fair stereotype or not really?
Yeah, but it's true in a way. Like it's very accepted with people who are transgender. You can see them everywhere, like these men who are actually women, and the same with women who are actually men. And it's not uncommon and it's not strange. And then we also have this fact with the sex tourism and these cities, but in another way, they are very restrictive when it comes to sex, and they are very prude. And their culture is framed of Buddhism. So when you are a Tantra teacher like myself and try to do something in Thailand, it's to be under the threat of the police constantly because
the Buddhist thing. Yeah. They don't like Buddhist tattoos and other stuff that's Buddhisty, right? Because that's their orthodox religion. And what can Sweden teach the world then? Like, is something, and maybe Scandinavia more generally, there is a stereotype there, but I think that is based on a certain openness or pragmaticness that for me feels very free and liberated and liberal. And it just feels like there's something that most of the world could really learn from Scandinavia.
Yeah, it's the way we communicate. We are very good at talking about things, and we think it's important with education and with facts. So Sweden is very good for the kind of sexuality work that is in education and science. Sweden.
Okay, where's it gone wrong in Scandinavia? Let's go the other way. So on the one hand, you've got the science, the clear communication. What? Because we've had some conversations about this before. Like, what has gone wrong though in this liberal utopia?
I think you refer to what you experience as the second stage, masculine and feminine, like the feminine the feminine who is very, I can do it myself, I don't need anyone, and I'm independent, and this kind of attitude. And the men who are, okay, what can I do for you, honey? And all right, I understand. What can I do for you? Like this completely... disempowered relationships between the men and the women. And I think Swedish people must relax more when it comes to relationships and when it comes to sexuality, and use their knowledge in the bodies and not only in their mind.
Something I've come across there is a denial of difference, like in a very well meaningful attempt to be kind of open-minded and be progressive. There's a sort of denial. Like I remember once I was talking to the HR manager of a large Swedish company I was working with, and I suggested that boys and girls were on the whole different. And I said, obviously there's spectrums and girls should be free to do whatever job they want and boys too. However, I said, I do see a difference. And she was incensed. Like she was enraged with me. I almost got stopped from working with the company ever again. So this is a large amount of work simply for saying that I saw a difference between boys and girls. And I just found that really surprising because in much of the world that's still pretty commonsensical that there is a difference. And socialization plays a huge role, but it's not all socialization. This sort of social constructivist theory seems to have gone through the roof in Sweden.
Yeah, it's because we are very scientifically minded. Like, but when you look at the women and the men, we are basically the same. It's nothing different. The man has the same brain as fuck it. It's not that kind of difference. It's another difference between us. And I think that we should honor ourselves as the kind of human beings that we are. Some people are estrogen filled with oxytocin and loves to cuddle around, while other people are more testosterone based and like to have challenges and to explore their explosive body, and we have to accept that it is different and that we can live together even though we are different, and we can enjoy each other's differences.
Yeah, appreciation of difference rather than trying to make everyone the same. And, I was watching some really good videos recently on YouTube. There's loads of great trans people on YouTube and they're taking hormones, some of these people. And I was watching a bunch of videos on the emotional and behavioral effects of taking testosterone or estrogen or whatever. And I suggested, I was thinking even about doing it as an experiment, but it turns out you have to take testosterone blockers for a year before you can take estrogen. You can't just do it for a week to see what it's like.
No.
Researched it. My wife was like, no. But this wasn't wife approved as a plan. But anyway, I looked at these videos, a lot of people on there, and it was really fascinating because it's like, obviously biology is making a difference because these people change just one piece of their biology, not on a cellular level, just on a hormone level. And, they were all reporting behavioral changes, emotional changes, people saying, I don't cry anymore, or I feel aggressive. So it's clear there's some biology behind this, whether that's politically correct or not. can you say something about those stages? Because I think you're referring to sort of David Deida's 3-stage model. Like that was one of the first models someone introduced to me about this stuff, and I found that really helpful. Like, how does it sort of starts out, men are macho jerks and kind of women are submissive housewives, and then it kind of swaps and the men become wimpy and the women become butch. And then there's this third stage, which I see sort of you and your colleagues operating in, where there's polarity again, but there's choice. It's not just naive. How would you describe? Is that a sort of fair description?
Yeah, that's 100% correct. And you can move almost all the situations and every friend that you have into this little framework, and you can see where you are operating in certain situations and where your friends are operating most of the time. So it's very interesting.
Yeah. And I've just found that there's some people that, is the opposite, almost switched over. And that's okay. That's the beauty of sort of the modern world, is it's cool if you're like a more yin guy or a more yang woman. Like, that's okay, right? And there's choice in different situations. This third stage has that freedom where you go, look, mostly I'm a yang guy, but right now I just want to follow, and that's okay. There's like a freedom in that.
Yeah. And that is like the third stage of this masculine and feminine, when we have access to our full potential, where we can make a choice. Because we have everything in us. Of course, being born in a masculine body that contains more muscle mass than a feminine body that contains more fat, for example, it will feel different. And the fact that you are born with a lingam and I'm born with a yoni, and they feel different, it will, of course, affect the way we feel in ourselves and the way we are acting and what we will think is interesting and fun to do in our life.
That's a cock and a pussy for those who are out there.
Yes.
Terminology. Yeah, there's differences there. So we talk about David Deida's model. He's a big name in this area. Are there any? I don't want to get all kind of masculine and model making about it, but I will. So are there any other sort of models that you found helpful for understanding, or do you use classical kind of Indian models? Like, what are you finding helpful for people to understand this potentially complex and confusing area?
Mm-hmm. Oh, how deep am I allowed to talk about this?
as long as listeners get it.
Oh my God. This is so interesting, and I can see so many models are talking about the same thing, like the Indian concept of Shiva Shakti. Like, if you really, really look at that, there is one unity, there is Vishnu, there is the one creator of all, and the Shiva Shakti, the combined masculine and feminine, that is the creator and the destroyer of everything. And everything is like all of the Hindu gods are either a part of Shiva or a part of Shakti. So they are just multiplying, just like, I think, creative energy, life force, the one spark that ignited the universe, spread in so many different shapes and so many different forms, and we are all a part of it. You can dive into the science of it, and you can dive into all of models like Taoism and yin and yang and nature religions, and it's all talking about the same thing, according to me.
And can I give you a compliment, actually? Is that okay?
Yeah.
You sure?
Yeah, for sure.
I love how you talk about this stuff. There's there's what you're saying, which is clear to me cognitively, but there's also a kind of like authenticity and flow in how you talk about this stuff. So these words coming out of someone else, I just wouldn't be interested in hearing. But there's a way in which you there's something very present and flowing, which embodies what I think you were talking about earlier around being kind of juicy and fully alive. Like, yeah, there's the theory, but there's also kind of how it comes across, right? Like who you are in your own embodiment that just feels really easy to connect with when I hear you talk about this. That's why I invited you on the show.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm so excited over these things. I love to talk with people about it.
Do you think it's necessary to understand like the Indian models? Because they never really resonated with me, like Shiva, Shakti. I just sort of turn off, Like, is there potential sort of like a cultural barrier in that? I guess for some people it really works, for some people less so.
Yeah, I was talking on another podcast yesterday about exactly the same thing. Like, maybe the Neo-Tantra has to change the concept of Shiva Shakti, because we have so many projections and misunderstanding in general public about it. and not all people are interested in diving deep into Hindu philosophy when they are trying out some Tantra, you know.
I mean, if those two were just called sort of, Susan and Ken, or the nearest Swedish equivalents, it's Bjorn and Maria or whatever, then you know what I mean? It would just I wonder if that exoticism is a bit of a barrier in some ways to realizing that this is just an ordinary, everyday, well, extraordinary but everyday kind of thing you're talking about, right? It's not necessarily some crazy special practice with gods with 20 arms and tentacle penises or whatever. Like this is an everydayness to this.
Yeah, it's an everydayness, and it's also possible to glue this philosophy on whatever you believe in, because it's whatever you believe in will make the power of your will stronger. So if you believe in an external God and you start to pray to that external God, or you believe in the power of sexuality, like if I orgasm together with my suggestion about the future, it will come true because I can do this sexual magic. If you believe that, then it is true. And the more strong you can believe in something, and the more higher states of ecstasy you can come into, the more you can create your own reality.
Okay, I think I want to challenge you on a couple of things here. First of all, I don't think people create their own reality entirely. I think that is overstated in New Age communities, and there's a kind of narcissism in that, like The Secret, this kind of thing. And the other one is there a risk here of kind of like state chasing? Because, coming to one of your workshops or other people in this field, it's really juicy and it's beautiful and everyone's connected and open, and, it's like, oh, it feels so good. Even just talking to you, there's a quality of sort of bliss in that I don't have when I talk to many guests. It's like, oh, it's like a laugh talking to you, Lin. It's pleasant in my body. And that's just the state, right? And also it's like, how sustainable is that? Not at Angsbacher, not a Buddhafield festival. How sustainable is that in the fucking Aldi supermarket on a rainy November afternoon in England or Sweden? Do you know what I mean? Like that kind of blissful state chasing seems to be a bit of a trap of this world.
And that's the how can I say, the mystery of this work, because the moment we start to chase something is the moment we are not getting it, and we experience that very much with practicing Tantra or any other thing for that case, like this spiritual ego that, I'm going to go to all the workshops and I'm going to experience all these great orgasms and have all these tantric lovers, but it's just a phase, and most people go through that phase and come out with realizing, like, I'm repeating my samskaras. I'm again trying to get something outside of myself, and oh my God, I just glued this on top of the most beautiful thing that is, and start to become more and more relaxing in the present moment. Yeah, life is life, and it contains everything: mistakes, mind fucks, ecstatic moments, and it's nothing to hold on to, because one day it's all over. So the only thing we can do is like, all right, I'm enjoying this present moment the way it is, and if I don't, that's also all right.
Yeah, the sort of the return home to the ordinary after the spiritual materialism kind of phase, isn't there, and the getting caught in the states and trying to replicate the states. And I actually think you just put your finger on the kind of clear of what's most important in this work, or something that I certainly value, is non-attachment, because there's an immediate feedback loop. But I found this doing kind of attraction work, like ethical pickup work, and I found this with money the same. There's a tantra of money. The moment I start wanting it, and that grasping, like fight flight but towards, like that grasping for money, the sale doesn't happen. And the same thing with attraction. Like most women that I've like been present with, and I go, I want to fuck her, and I go into that grasping mode, then she's not interested. Just or you don't have the orgasm because you're trying too hard, or whatever it is. It just seems like there's this beautiful, almost devilish though feedback loop with tantra, and the same with money, of when you grasp, you don't get. So it's a hell of a practice for non-grasping, right?
Yeah, And that makes the Tantra so beautiful as a spiritual practice, because it's so fucking triggering, and our mind and our ego become so visible, and our fears become so visible. And then we can allow ourselves to relax and like once again return to the present moment, and once again, oh, I'm all right. I'm fucking all right. I have everything.
I don't need to get this girl or this guy or this orgasm or whatever, right? The hungry ghost in Buddhism. Yeah. You know what? I'm good without this. And what I always find hilarious is, you know, I'd be on a date or whatever, and then as soon as I let go of an outcome, usually the best outcome happens. But I can't trick that. It has to be like a genuine letting go. You know what I mean? Like, you know what? It's all good. And this is where like abundance is so helpful, right? Like if you're really like emotionally abundant, spiritually, sexually, financially abundant, there is that sense that it becomes easier, you know. And then when you're not, it's a much harder game to play, which is this is the devilish thing, right? You can get into a vicious or a virtuous cycle with this. Okay, why don't we go really pragmatic here then? So someone out there, I want to speak to two groups of people listening: people that do not have a partner and would like one, and people that have a partner, but maybe they could be more connected. Like I put myself in that category. I love my wife. We have a good sex life, emotional life, but you know, it could be even better, right? Why not? So, you know, can we speak a little bit to like just really practical things? Like, let's start with the first group. Someone's listening to this and they're going, look, I'm a yoga teacher or an Aikido teacher or whatever, but I'm single and I don't want to be. I want to find a beautiful person that I can have a deep emotional sexual life with. What would be your kind of tips? What would be your advice to that person?
All right. So first of all, it's to make your relationship to yourself the way you want to have a relationship with someone else.
Right.
Like let go of the projection that someone else is going to do it for you, and start to treat yourself with so much juicy love that your radiance will blow the people's mind away. And so then you're going to be honest with your desire and true to your feelings. And when you feel it, you're going to express it. Yes, because there is nothing that is more attractive than a person who is really satisfied and juiced up by him or herself, and that sees you with that spark in the eye of attraction and love and and like, you know what? I really fancy you.
So I really want to underline this because I've found this to be so true. You know, I don't work at the level of depth you have, but I've done a bit of stuff on coaching and attraction and embodiment, and the idea of like self-love, which of course underpins confidence. Like I've been all around the world and I'd say what's sexy, what's attractive, and people all around the world, any culture, gay or straight, will say confidence. So what underpins confidence, like true confidence, not bravado, would be self-love. You know, like my wife has this in buckets, and it's like that treating yourself like you want the relationship to be, coming from that place of like, I'm already enough, I'm good, and you know, I can be in relationship. And the second thing I heard you talk about there was like owning that feeling. So there isn't like this, I find it so unsexy when people have like shame around sex. And you know, I walked by someone today and it's spring here, and I walked by someone today and they were just in a dress and they looked beautiful and they smiled at me, and I just kind of went, and I've probably never seen a person again in my life, but I was just really acknowledged. And even in the smile, I expressed to her like, hey, I'm a man, you're a woman. I get it. You get it. Have a great day. And I didn't stop to talk to the person. Just like, spring is fucking here, you know? No shame, no trying to get anything, just walking back to my office. And it was like, yeah. So this doesn't have to be like a big acting out, right? It doesn't have to be fucking 100 people a day or something.
Yes, yeah, that's right. And it's so amusing to live life like that, and you can do it no matter if you're married or single. Like everyday flirting, it boosts you up, and it brings so much joy to life and to other people. So
how do people flirt? So for our singles out there, how do they flirt? If you wanted to flirt with me, what would you do?
I would be authentic with you, with what I felt, because you can't flirt without feeling. Of course you can, but it would be like a play, like, oh, I'm going to do this and that to flirt. It's not it. But I will be genuine with what I feel when I see you, what is awake in me, like tell you, oh, you smile really beautiful, and I love the color of your skin when you smile like that, and to allow
Any
yourself
compliment is a good one if it's authentic, right? Like I found this. You could be like, you have a nice face, or I love the fact that your nose sparkles, or your boobs are great. Like it can be like anything as long as it's real and it's from that position of giving rather than taking, right?
And being interested, like if you see someone that you're interested in, flirting can be being authentically interested in who this person is. I want to get to know you. How can I get to know you? Can we take a walk right now and let me ask you everything that I want to know about you,
The curiosity and presence is sexy as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. So any other final tips for our singles out there? Love yourself, find a way to own your sexuality. Get embodied, we'd have to put that in there, right? Like that's people who are in their bodies are just more attractive. Any other sort of top tips you would give to the singles out there?
Go places where you can get to know people. Don't sit at home and scroll on the internet and look for someone. Come
on, it has its place. I've had some great times from Tinder, but no, why are you so prejudiced against this? Like that's the way people can meet people. Like, I mean, obviously you've got to be a bit of do filtering and check there's real connection afterwards, but it's this is like romantic notion that we always have to meet people face to face. That's very limited numbers for a lot of people.
Yeah, in a way you're 100% true, and maybe I'm judging a little bit too much this situation, but through my experience, when I started this journey, I was attracted by looks, and then when I started this journey, I realized, oh my God, when I'm standing in front of the looks, I'm fucking not attracted, because I want something else. And then I started to go more for the feeling, like I'm not so fascinated about surface. I want that what is exciting underneath, I
like both.
Yes. Yeah, but
and I think for some, I know people who aren't sexy except in real life, and I think for those people, internet dating is a terrible idea. Like I know people that just physically, you look at their face on Tinder or whatever, and you'd be like, yeah, okay, but not really. But then you meet them and they're so alive. It's like, those people are going to have a much better time in real life.
Yeah. It's like seeing a person having an orgasm. It doesn't matter how it looked before, how so-called ugly the person was before. When a person has the genuine orgasm, it's only beauty. It's radiant beauty.
Most people are worried about how their face looks.
No.
Most people are worried about how their face looks in that circumstance.
No, it's so beautiful.
Okay, so what about some tips or advice for people who, like myself, they're in relationships, they're good relationships, they're happy, but they go, okay, more connection, deeper connection, better sex, like that's all good. So what would be your sort of top tips for people like me?
The same, like the singles, like be authentic and be in the beginner's mind, because when we have a relationship, it's easy to believe that our partner was the same today like 2 months ago, but we all know that we are changing all the time, and we get new inputs and life goes on, and to meet each other with a sense of curiosity and maybe stage life, so that there are opportunities to meet in curiosity, and also with honesty, sharing your intimate thoughts and not hiding the intimate thoughts. Oh, I was attracted to a woman on the streets today, and I flirted with her, and I get really excited, to tell all these little secrets to our beloved ones, and to be true with 100% who we are. I think that's the key.
It's kind of the same advice, isn't it, for singles as couples, like being present to yourself, being kind to yourself, being authentic.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't talked much about communicating what you do and don't want. That seems to be like it, I've heard many, many sex therapists and coaches say, if I could give one piece of advice, it would be learn to ask for what you want. That seems to be like key advice from so many people. So it's not really so different whether, I guess, people are in a relationship or not. I guess maybe the challenge is that familiarity, though, right? That sense like, oh, I know this person, or we always have sex this way, or we're comfortable around each other. Yeah, the polarity disappearing. They seem to be the challenges for people who, let's say, live together.
Yeah, not being curious anymore, believing that we know already. And maybe we do know exactly how to get a clitoral orgasm, and we do the same pattern every time we make love. And it's not so funny anymore as it was in the beginning when we were curious and everything was new. And so when sex is not equally funny anymore, it tends to be more seldom, and relationships start to be more cranky and drifting away into other fantasies. And to come back to, maybe it's changed. Maybe there is other ways to relate sexually. Maybe if I can lick your anus, or you can give me a cervix massage, or maybe we don't have sex for 1 month and get really, really horny on each other. Or, there are so many different ways to reboot the sexual system so that we can meet each other as beginners again.
Yeah, that coming with that curiosity, because that is sexy, right? Like that, like, hey, I wonder what is under that dress. Not just like, I know what you look like naked, or the sexuality. I think maybe for guys particularly can become like a task, like, yeah, I know how to like give her an orgasm. I can do that. I've got it down. I'm efficient. And then it's like, yeah, but there's something lost in that in terms of play and curiosity, isn't there?
And it's a lot of burden for the men also. They carry a lot of this. I'm supposed to give her an orgasm and it's supposed to be good.
Women, take some fucking responsibility. It's your body.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, my job is to be of service and to do my fucking best and to help you out and give you time and love and space, but take some fucking responsibility.
Yeah. And that was, for me, it really cracked the code in Tantra and in my own life when I started to realize the power of taking, like how powerful it is to allow myself to take, of course, within consent. Can I take this from you? Can I enjoy you fully? Can I enjoy this moment as much as I like?
Great. That's beautiful to hear. Beautiful to hear. So when you work with couples, do you work with them physically, or are you just kind of giving them advice or, counseling? Like, this is the full spectrum for you?
It's everything. It depends on the couple. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes I guide one of them into exercise. Sometimes I guide them both into exercise. Sometimes I guide them and then I leave the room.
Okay, bye.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What would surprise people about what you do? So, many of the listeners are going to have a bit of a sense of Tantra. They might have done the odd course or a couple of workshops at a festival or something, but what would really surprise people, do you think, about your work?
What would surprise them? I think it's the love. It is the love that you feel when you go into the session, and the love that is possible to feel to a random person. Like the kind of unconditional love that I feel when I'm at work. It's really mind-blowing, and I think people feel are doubting that it's possible to feel that much love to randoms.
I said to my 12-step group today, we're talking about relating to people, and there's people with a lot of different backgrounds there. I said, look, I don't like all of you, and I wouldn't want all of you as friends, but I kind of love all of you. And I know that is possible to get into that state for work, and it's, maybe taboo to talk about even more than sex, maybe, but like to talk about loving at work. I think that's a beautiful thing.
It's beautiful.
Feels like we're sort of naturally moving towards the finish here. I want to kind of honor the natural orgasm curve of the interview.
Yeah.
That's part of Tantra, right? Like noticing there's beginnings, middles, and ends, and rests after cycles. There's a flow to things. It isn't just to be forced.
And afterwards, after this podcast, you take a few moments and just enjoy the afterglow of the present moment.
So listeners are gonna, what I would maybe point listeners to is I feel like we have a nice yin-yang polarity in our voices and our styles, and there's a way in which I feel like we're really representing a kind of side of a polarity here, and people can hear that in the kind of clarity or the pushing that I sometimes do, or the challenging, And then with you, the acceptance and the flow and the listening, like I just want to tell me if you think this is okay and appropriate. And I want to point listeners to their own body response, gay or straight, male or female, whatever, to that polarity. Like, people are going to be hearing our voices and responding bodily quite differently, I suspect.
Yes, very interesting.
Mark and Lin coming in your ears.
Yes. It has been so much fun to do this with you, Mark.
It's been beautiful. And where do people find out more about you and your work?
They can go to my homepage, theartoflove.nu. NU, that means now in Swedish. So The Art of Love, NU, now. Okay,
I had a different website, so I just bring that up. And that's Swedish, but you can translate it. Beautifully done. What else would I expect? And in terms of general resources on Tantra, are there other teachers you'd recommend, other courses you'd recommend? It's like, I'm asking for myself as much as anything. Like, I was one called The Path of Love I've become interested in. I mean, are there people or teachers out there that, you're feel free to promote your own stuff, but as well, like a wider field that you'd recommend?
I can recommend my friend Kobe. He's based in Copenhagen. He's working a lot with heart and really beautiful. And also his teacher who works in Russia, whose name is Hari Prem. He's one of the old teachers with a lot of experience. And ISTA, of course, like it's a big school with a lot of facilitators. It's like the first step into Tantra, like the very basic and beautiful educating training.
Can you send me those links when we're finished, just so I can share those with people on the stage? I'll definitely share yours, of course, but I want to kind of really make this podcast generous so people can just enrich themselves, and sometimes different schools work for different people. I'd also just point listeners to the other people we've had on. So we had Michaela Boehm, we've had a few other people, Gayatri, a few other people from this kind of area on, as much because I'm learning about it as anything. I feel like my journey with embodiment started with like martial arts. It started in a very different place, from war on now kind of moving to love. And it's like through yoga and dance and other things. Like, I feel like I just really encourage listeners who maybe come from a background which isn't like hippie or new agey to actually, try and find some quality work in this area. It feels to me like it's an enriching piece, even if it doesn't necessarily as your first thing. That in the same way, all the hippie new agers out there fucking do some martial arts as well, get some spine.
Yeah.
So you know what I mean? Like this is what this podcast is all about, is opening people's minds to different possibilities. And I'm only having people on the show who I've already filtered through multiple layers of quality checking. So in most cases, I've met them, I've studied with them a little bit, I've at least kind of, like with you, spent a bit of time with you, got your vibe. So I really hope this podcast, I don't normally speak about this in the podcast, but as we've got a bit of extra time today, that feels like a nice thing to say to people is like, look, part of what I'm doing here is being of service to anyone listening and saying, these are people that I would at least partly recommend, even if I don't know them well. So, yeah.
Super, Mark. Thank you for doing this.
Oh, it's a real pleasure. I get to have juicy conversation. I think I'm going to call this one Juicy Love as well. Podcast. So, final message about the body for our listeners.
Allow yourself to enjoy it and let it take control.
Okay. Thank you so much. I feel like I need to go next door and kiss my wife passionately.
Good.
Beautiful, beautiful podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to get more. If you'd like to help us build the Embodied Tribe, leave a review on iTunes or share this on your social media. If you're interested in training globally, sign up to receive the newsletter at embodiedfacilitator.com. Until next time, welcome home to the body.